The nemesis of the late winner for City, VAR, has shown its face again to the dismay of the most emotional boy in the world, Gabriel Jesus, king of the expressive eyebrows club. Hey, I'm Adrian from Rabona TV, and this is of course the weekend recap brought to you by our lovely sponsors OneFootball, the app that keeps you up to date on the transfer stories and rates the likelihood of the transfers, live scores, and match tickers, highlights, videos, and much more on your customizable newsfeed. Use the link in the description for a free download on Android or iOS. The biggest matchup of the weekend with respect to Chelsea and Leicester was no doubt City versus Tottenham, playing for the first time since the lovely April they shared together, where they played 3 times in 11 days. City came out the stronger side and stayed that way throughout the match, basically. They absolutely dominated Spurs in this one. Sterling continued his hot start to the season by nodding home a beautiful looping ball to the back post by KDB. People forget how little he played last season and how much he adds to their attack. It's huge to have him back and dropping dimes on his teammates like that one. But no matter how Tottenham are battered, just as they did in the Champions League last season, you gotta admire them for it. They find a way to get goals. And Lamela did just that from about almost 25 yards out. Decent strike, but I think Ederson will want that one back. He wasn't set properly or positioned properly, as you can see here. So, 1-1, but not for long, as De Bruyne was at it again, this time putting the ball on a plate for Aguero to convert from 6 yards out. But in between the 8 saves that Lloris was forced into on the day, Tottenham again found an equalizer with Lucas Moura, the hero, rising highest from a corner to make it 2-2 against the run of play again, but Spurs will not care. And then of course, what would a Manchester City versus Tottenham match be without that new spice added in, that VAR spice when City think they've scored the winner? This was a weird one, as I don't think there was a soul in the building or in the commentary box that spotted the handball from Aymeric Laporte prior to Gabriel Jesus' goal in the 90th minute. Now, as you can see here, it did come into contact with his arm. It's negligible, but as of June 1st, 2019, the rule change regarding handballs for attackers means that any contact with the hand or arm of an attacker whatsoever in the build-up to a goal, any, without exception, will be called back for a handball. Extremely unfortunate call, but technically the correct call, and Spurs were saved once again at the death by VAR. City legit had 10 times the shots that Spurs had. 30 attempts to just 3. Spurs were economical and benefited from that big blunder from Ederson. City had problems in converting, hit the bar. Spurs defended heroically and blocked 12 attempts, and Lloris saved the rest. That was the match, basically. Unfortunate for attackers now how every single handball will be called against them, whereas the defenders, as long as they have their natural silhouette, it's not a handball. Arsenal had a tricky fixture for their home opener, taking on a Burnley side that may have surprised some with how easily they dismantled Southampton in their first match. David Luiz and Ceballos got the start, while Pepe again started on the bench, but was introduced later in the game and showed some flashes of brilliance on the ball. Arsenal did dominate the ball, but Burnley was still capable of causing plenty of problems, and perhaps with some better finishing, would have got a better result out of this one. Dani Ceballos and Lacazette got things started in the 13th minute as Ceballos' corner fell nicely at Lacazette's feet and he banged it between Pope's legs and in. Pope had a great match, by the way, as he was forced into 7 saves, a few of them pretty decent. Ashley Barnes scored his 3rd of the season in the 43rd minute after a deflected strike fell very kindly to his feet and he slotted past Leno. In the second half, Aubameyang had a flurry of chances that were either just wide or saved. Ceballos came close from distance, etc. And then finally, Ceballos poked the ball through to Aubameyang and he lashed it past Pope. Great match from Ceballos. Arsenal go 2 for 2. Chelsea and Leicester met up for a very nice little fixture. 2 very even teams, but the first half was almost completely Chelsea's. The first part of the first half, especially the opening minutes, as they were clearly trying to set the tone for the rest of the match. And while they did find a goal via Mason Mount, they had a hard time keeping that tempo up as the match dragged on, and they got worse and worse. So let's skip to the second half, and it was one-way traffic for Leicester pretty much, as they began carving open the Chelsea back line and creating genuine chances, but their finishing was atrocious most of the time. But they did find an equalizer eventually when Ndidi made up for earlier blunder from a Maddison free kick. This time, Ndidi headed past Kepa to make it 1-1. From there, the Leicester onslaught continued, but Again, they lacked that quality not only in the finishing from Vardy and Maddison, but in their final ball as well, and decision-making in the final third. Chelsea was there for the taking, but Leicester just couldn't find a way through. Loved the rugby tackle from Christensen on Vardy at the end that was given as a foul by Vardy somehow. 1-1 the final. Chelsea started well and got worse and worse as it went on. Leicester trending in the opposite direction throughout the match. Those two teams are going to battle it out for 6th, 7th, 8th there. Elsewhere, Brighton and West Ham tied 1-1 as Brighton continued to do well, while West Ham, worrying start to the season, but I expect them to come good eventually. Watford lost yet again, this time to Everton. Liverpool, despite playing midweek, had too much energy for Southampton as they won 2-1. Big mistake from Adrian for Southampton's goal. Mane and Firmino, the scores for Liverpool, as you were for them. Teemu Pukki continued his incredible start to the season as he scored a hat-trick against a very poor Newcastle side. Well-deserved victory. 4 goals already for Pukki as he leads the scoring charts alongside Sterling. And it will be interesting to see if he can keep this form up, man. I was skeptical as to whether he would be able to replicate his championship form in the Premier League. After 2 games, still early, guys. He looks capable of it. Incredible finisher. Bournemouth, they got the victory over Aston Villa 2-1 despite being on the back foot for most of the match, to be honest. Villa were extremely wasteful with their opportunities and they paid for it. They were 2-0 down after just 12 minutes and they couldn't bring it back from that. And finally, Sheffield United took their tally to 4 points with a win over Crystal Palace. You love to see it. And United and Wolves will be playing later today, which should be a great match. The Bundesliga kicked off this past Friday. Happy to see it return, with Bayern Munich opening the season at home against Hertha Berlin. And Bayern, they absolutely dominated this match. I mean, in the second half, they had 76% of the ball. They were greedy boys. But they weren't exactly great at breaking through Hertha's deep block, and Hertha had some help as well. After Lewandowski put Bayern ahead in the 23rd minute thanks to a beautifully squared ball by Gnabry. Gnabry was top in this match, by the way. He's looking like he's in fine form. But Hertha rallied and a massive deflection made its way past Neuer. Unfortunate for him there. A couple minutes later, though, Marco Grujic was played through, rounded Neuer, and made it 2-1 just like that. Thankfully for Bayern, they were somewhat spared of their blushes when Lewandowski was tossed to the floor in the 56th minute and converted the subsequent penalty. But that was all they could muster. They opened with a draw, giving Dortmund the opportunity to take an early lead in the standings, which they took, and then some. They booty slapped Augsburg 5-1 in a match that was completely dominated by them, both on the scoreline and the flow of the match. Dortmund with 78 possession. 78. But unlike Bayern, Dortmund were cutting through Augsburg's defense with seeming ease, knocking 5 past poor Thomas Kubek in goal. What's crazy is that Augsburg set the tone in this game early, like almost directly from kickoff, as Florian Niederlechner, who looked good in the moments he had the ball, he converted Pedersen's cutback just 32 seconds into the match. Akanji really lost his man there. Wasn't his best game, but thankfully Mats Hummels looked solid alongside Schultz. They looked good together on that left side of the back four. For me though, nobody looked as good as Paco Alcacer and Axel Witsel. I mean, I guess you could add Sancho into the mix as well. Alcacer leveled in the 3rd minute, then after the half, Dortmund scored 3 goals in just 8 minutes, with new boy Julian Brandt adding the 5th in the 82nd minute. Domination, Thorgan Hazard looked promising in the attack with Royce, Sancho, and Alcacer, and then you bring in Brandt? Dortmund could be scary this season. They're out to redeem themselves after the collapse last season. Leverkusen looked good going forward against newly promoted SC Paderborn, but credit to the new boys as when they did attack, they were able to convert their chances, but ultimately fell 3-2 as they tried to just hold on to the draw in the second half and paid for it. Leipzig, they also played a promoted side in Union Berlin. Leipzig dispatched the relegation playoff winners pretty easily, winning 4-0 in Berlin thanks in large part to Marcel Sabitzer, who scored once and assisted the other 3 goals. Big boy performance from the Austrian. Hastenberg was great as well though, grabbing both a goal and an assist himself, playing as a wingback. Moving on to Spain now, as like the Bundesliga, it started up on Friday with Barcelona taking on Athletic Bilbao at San Mamés Stadium. And Barcelona didn't look very good. In my preview, I said that Griezmann would help to offset the load that Messi had to carry last season as he rescued a ton of points for Barcelona and looked like their only threat in the attack at times. Well, if the rest of the season plays out like this first match, it could be more of the same for Barcelona, impudence in the attack. Ousmane Dembele was their main threat, I guess. And to give you an idea of how poor they were, there was a compilation video made of his disaster class showcasing all of his wayward passes that went straight out of bounds, his loose touches, etc. The bright spot for Barcelona, in my opinion, was Frenkie de Jong, as he looks quite comfortable in that midfield already, completed 93% of his passes, went 2 for 2 with long balls, won possession 6 times, had 2 interceptions, but was weak in the air, which is no surprise really. He prefers when the ball's on the ground. Athletic picked up from where they left off last season, as they were extremely well organized, defended well, and were economical with the limited time they had on the ball, forcing a couple fine saves from Ter Stegen. And then the 38-year-old Aritz Aduriz came onto the pitch in what is his final season with the club and as a professional, and started it off right with a ludicrous overhead kick in the 88th minute to win the match for Bilbao and start Barcelona off on the wrong foot. Valverde out hashtag is already appearing all over Barcelona Twitter. Their rivals Real Madrid, despite a bit of a tumultuous preseason, looked alright against Celta Vigo. Now, Celta Vigo are expected to finish in the low side of the table, but they still caused a few problems of their own for Real Madrid. Early in the match, you got the feeling there would be a red card, as Celta racked up 3 yellows in the first 12 minutes, but it was Luka Modric who got his first ever red card at Real Madrid in the 56th minute. Unexpected and a bit unfortunate, to be honest. But before that, in the 12th minute, Bale squared to Benzema to make it 1-0. Then in the 61st, Toni Kroos hit an absolute stunner off the bar just 5 minutes after Modric was sent off, 2-0. And of course, one of the most divisive Real Madrid players, Lucas Vazquez, scored the third to make it 3-0. So a great result to kick off the season, especially grabbing 2 goals after going down a man. They did concede in stoppage time, but a 3-1 win will be a welcome sight for Zidane to kick things off, as Madrid looked fairly comfortable, especially being a man down for the last 30 minutes or so, 35 minutes. Atletico opened their season with a tricky test against Getafe and for the most part looked pretty good. Morata was fairly on it, and Trippier's crossing is starting the season well as he picked out Morata's head. They clearly brought in Trippier to try and rekindle the same kind of magic Morata had with Azpilicueta for a time at Chelsea. So far so good, as he gets his first goal of the season. João Felix didn't see a ton of the ball, but when he did, he looked very good. The highlight of which was a mazy run in which he drew out 3 or 4 defenders. Then when eventually he was taken down in the box, Morata's penalty was saved. A great save by David Soria, to be honest. Angel came close at the end for Getafe as his strike from distance rattled the bar, but Atletico held on 1-0. I liked what I saw from Atletico. Trouble generating chances at times, but I mean, they were up against one of the best defenses in the league from last season, so that was to be expected. Sevilla looked good value in their opener, defeating Espanyol away 2-0. Loanee Sergio Reguilon, hashtag justice for Reguilon. He scored for Sevilla close to halftime, and Nolito added a second close to the end of the match. I personally loved Nolito at Benfica. He wasn't perfect, but I loved him. Anyway, side note. And Valencia found their form once again as they pulled out their favorite result, a draw with Real Sociedad. Will they once again be able to get more draws than wins in the league? We shall see. In France, Lyon continues to smash up the place as they destroyed Angers 6-0 on Friday. Lyon loves those Friday night matches, man. Depay and Dembele both scored a brace. Aouar and Lucas grabbed the other 2 goals. Aouar was incredible in this match, by the way. A goal and 2 assists, 1 possession well, completed every dribble he attempted. 92% of his 64 attempted passes completed. Dominant. Lyon have scored 9 goals in 2 matches and conceded 0. Marseille, they're still pretty crap as they went away to Nantes and tied 0-0. Andre Villas-Boas not having the greatest of starts in Marseille, but I expect things to turn around eventually. Either that or he's a confirmed fraud, as I've always expected. Was blessed at Porto with an incredible team, a team that was head and shoulders above the rest of the league. How could you not win with that team? Didn't do great at Chelsea, didn't do great at Spurs, did fine in Russia. We'll see. We'll see how he does in Marseille. Monaco is also pretty crap. Despite making some moves this summer, they followed up their loss from the first match of the season with a second loss, losing 3-0 to Metz, of all teams. Doesn't help that Ruben Aguiar was sent off in the 34th minute, but man, Monaco's bad. Know who else looked not great this weekend? PSG, but saying they were bad isn't the whole story, as Stade Rennais, who defeated PSG in the Coupe de France final, looked very good in this match. Niang scored a banger in the 44th minute to level from Cavani's opener earlier. Then, 16-year-old Angolan player Eduardo Camavinga played a beautiful ball to Romain Del Castillo just after the half, and he headed past Areola to make it 2-1, which was the final score. PSG were relentless in the second half and trying to find an equalizer, as you do, and they came close on a few occasions, but lost 2-1. Not great from Tuchel and PSG, as their problems from the end of last season seem to have not been figured out as of yet. Or, conversely, perhaps Stade Rennais is just a bogey team for them. We'll see. Okay guys, I blabbed a lot for much of this and we're running a little long, so we'll call it there. For all of you aspiring Benfica fans, you'll be happy to know that we won 2-0, though Porto also looked good against the Setúbal and won 4-0, and Sporting just edged Braga 2-1. So, we're still top with a +7 goal difference from 2 matches. Famalicão just right behind us, the newly promoted guys. Alright guys, as always, I thank you for watching. I have a cool video coming at you in a few days, a fun collaboration that I think you'll dig. Other than that, I'm Adrian. I'll see you very soon. Later.